question. The Forest Service, when we met with them on the issue of biochar, they told us that biochar represents the first opportunity they have ever seen to enhance the below-ground resource, because the Forest Service is responsible for both above and below-ground resources, but they've never really had a true opportunity to work on the below-ground resource, and they felt that biochar is the first opportunity. So I urge you to continue to carry that message to the Forest Service and others. So I have 5 minutes. I'll speak really fast. Ron asked me to cover 4 things in the policy arena. So challenges and opportunities, metaphors or frames in how we talk to policymakers about biochar, and then our individual policy roles and what we're trying to see or what it is we're trying to accomplish, and then address state, federal, national, and international level policy arenas. You know I can't do that in 5 minutes, so maybe I'll take 6. So I've tried to boil it down. From the very, very broadest perspective, when I talk to policymakers, I talk about climate change and food security, because those are 2 of the biggest issues that we are facing, whether people like to acknowledge it or not. We can't continue to produce food, feed, and fiber the way we are and increase food production to meet increasing populations. And I think biochar offers a way to not only address problems with agriculture and environmental impact of agriculture, but increase food productivity. I won't go into that a lot. I think you all are familiar with that. So I do talk about agriculture as part of the climate change mitigation solution and a way to respond to the food security crisis. But the big issue I try to get across to policymakers is they're often thinking about pollution and how to solve pollution problems. And when we're talking about biological systems, it's a very, very different approach. You cannot take a regulatory approach to using biochar or agriculture to solve environmental issues. These are complex biological systems, so that's one of the things I really try to get across to regulators. And just as an example, I've been working in California on the carbon offset market. It's taken us 3 years to get across to the people that we're working with the idea that, oh, agriculture is different, and if we're going to create offsets for agriculture, we do have to approach it from a very different perspective than the approach we have for point source pollution, rated point source offsets. It takes a long time to get that across to policymakers. And biochar, because it works as part of a complex biological system, fits within that matrix. So it's difficult, and Johannes, I think, spoke to a lot of that as well. But that's one of the things we have to address. Globally, I think one of the issues is that we're intensifying, we're specializing, and we're reducing the biodiversity of agricultural systems, and biochar, as we've been hearing, can help us to address a lot of those issues, including the incidence of increased diseases and disease vectors that we will continue to see as climate change continues. We're already seeing that rust cropping up in coffee crops, in wheat crops, and in other crops. Biochar has the potential to help us address this. And we're just starting to see a little bit of that research, and I think a lot more of that needs to happen. But when the policymakers are faced with the issue of constituents coming saying, you have to help me with this problem of rust on coffee or wheat, and we say biochar could be part of the problem, they pay attention. So we need to start making these connections that sometimes seem like they're one-off, but they're actually very part of the solution, if you will. So broadly speaking, that's the frame I typically operate from. Talking about state, federal, and international levels, I think IBI feels quite passionately about the fact that we need to get a handle on biochar as a credible solution. We need to police ourselves. We need standards. We need certainty in the marketplace. And so we focus a lot of our time on that, and I think it's very important. It's very important to communicate that to policymakers and regulators, because I am sure, I have been up to talk to EPA many, many times, but I am sure the moment they see some real commercial movement within biochar, they're going to step in and believe they need to start regulating something. So we do have to be able to show them that we're regulating ourselves. At the state level, I can tell projects, pilot projects, Josh Fry's one of them. It's the wild, wild west. Every single state has either no policy or different policy on pyrolysis as a technology, biochar as a potential soil amendment. There's a lot of work that needs to be done there, and I'm afraid it's being done by all of you because there's so much of it. And again, every single state has a different policy. At the national level, we don't have a policy. I've talked to USBI, I've talked to EPA, I've talked to the Forest Service. And as I've indicated, EPA is not yet interested, but I believe they will be interested when they start seeing some commercial scale activity in this space. I think the one valid, good point to make there to them is that biochar is a soil amendment, and they don't regulate soil amendments. They regulate fertilizers, but they don't regulate soil amendments. So again, if we can show that we are policing ourselves in the safety of the products that we are utilizing as a soil amendment, I think we're doing a good job there. Internationally, well, federally, I'll just say, I think you all know, our government is broken. There's really hardly any point talking to the legislature right now about what's happening. When David brings up the Farm Bill, there is movement in the Farm Bill. There's one program in the Farm Bill that I have been concentrating on, and it's a new one. And it's bringing together public-private partnerships to work with conservation programs. And I think the public-private partnerships are actually a real significant opportunity for us in the scientific arena and in the biochar arena. Increasingly, all of the federal agencies are faced with fiscal crises. The current crisis we're having is not going to stop anytime soon. And USDA, I work on USDA with a lot of projects, and they're very interested in public-private partnerships and others bringing money to the table to help leverage their resources. And biochar is a perfect opportunity to do that. And to the extent that we can work with them to bring demonstration projects to bear, I think they'd be very interested. Not only the Agricultural Research Service, but other parts. At NRCS, for instance, has been funding conservation innovation grants, including grants that are working on biochar. So that's a real opportunity to work together with some of our federal partners. Then I'll just talk briefly about the international process. I also think, frankly, that the Framework Convention process is broken. Until Copenhagen, I went to just about every single COP, carrying the soil carbon message and for a long time the biochar message. Until the three top emitters in the world actually start participating, and that's the United States and China, and right now Indonesia because of peatland destruction and forest destruction, we're not going to be able to resolve this crisis. I do think one of the ways that we can continue to have an impact is to continue working there, but also looking at the other Rio conventions. The Convention on Biological Diversity has a very significant sustainable agriculture component within which biochar offers perfect opportunities for solutions that really address the biodiversity component. And then the third sister convention is UNCCD, or the Convention to Combat Desertification. IBI has done some work with them in the past, and desertification, of course, is trying to reverse the lack of organic matter, if you will, in soil. Biochar, of course, offers a great opportunity there. So to the extent that the UN can begin to stop stovepiping those three conventions and address this problem of climate change and food security and other environmental crises together, I think we have a real opportunity. And then my final thought is that I've been doing a lot of work with sustainable supply chain initiatives. A lot of multinational corporations have made commitments about reducing their environmental footprint, whether for corporate social responsibility issues or because they see that in 5 or 10 years they cannot source products that they need to continue to exist. So they're increasingly looking down their supply chain. At the very end of the supply chain is agriculture. And a lot of these corporations are trying to squeeze emissions reductions out of agriculture. One of the things we need to do is get biochar into the mix, but also embed a profit for the people who actually make the change on the ground, and that's the farmers and the people who produce biochar. Ron has stopped me from talking.
John Bonitz.
Face. I'll put it this way, they're struggling with the Taylor rule on biogenic carbon for a whole host of reasons, one of which they can't decide internally what to do with waste that is burned versus waste that is used for another product. Okay, so internally they're having that problem. I think that's part of it. Whether or not we can get EPA to consider biochar as a back, I don't know. I have to tell you, I have been unable to break through to EPA. And I've talked to everyone, including Bob Kirschenstein. He's as high as I could get. He seemed very interested, but I can get no movement out of them. I think again, I don't believe we will see them really do anything until they see enough commercial viable activity. They just don't think they have to pay attention to it yet. And that's my personal observation.
Debbie, we keep talking about the fact that our political system is dysfunctional at this time, and yet most of the policy solutions we keep presenting are top-down solutions. Would you comment on your thoughts about bottom-up solutions, education, and really bottom solutions?
Yes, and I can talk about it from the perspective of some of the work I've been doing on projects, demonstration projects on the ground that bring together public and private entities, because I really do think that's where we're going to see some action in the future. We need to get more projects going. We need to show the policymakers that these work. One of the things I have been talking to the Senate Ag Committee, not the House Ag Committee, but the Senate Ag Committee about is this, it's called FCCP, the partnerships program, that utilizes funding from all of the conservation programs. And I think that is an opportunity to, again, demonstrate that there's a constituency, that there are viable solutions on the ground, that they're economically viable, and that they can address multiple needs. One of the problems we had, as I was trying to get to it, the fact that agriculture and a lot of the environmental impacts are biological problems. We can't regulate a lot of these because farmers are innovators. Their habits, their activities change from day to day. So the more we can demonstrate projects that address multiple problems, whether it be greenhouse gases, soil erosion, food security, crop productivity, air quality, water quality, and address multiple of these benefits, I think the more we'll get the attention of policymakers who, again, are facing the fiscal crisis beyond the fact that they can't work together.